Welcome to the Rookie Recap, the show where we talk about an episode of The Rookie, break it down, and find some hidden details. Today's episode is the pilot episode of the show. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. The episode starts with, obviously, the main character, John Nolan. The showrunner, Alexi Hawley, brought back Nathan Fillion from his past TV show Castle to star as the main character in The Rookie. Not only was Nathan casted to be the main character, but he is also an executive producer in the show, working together with Alexi Hawley behind the scenes. It's very obvious that Alexi tried to bring back some of the magic that Castle had into the pilot episode of his new show, such as Nathan Fillion's iconic ugly haircut, but it didn't end up sticking when they continued filming the rest of the season. Nolan is silently sitting in his truck, staring at a filed divorce form. It's sad, but we don't even get to see his ex-wife on screen until season 3 of the show. John's friend, Stacy, who works at the bank he's parked outside of, tells him that the bank is now open. They walk inside together, where Stacy asks John what his plans are for the future now that he's divorced. He told Stacy that the divorce had been planned for a while, but agreed to stay together until their son, Henry, moved away for college. He also told Stacy that he bought a self-help book for himself, but can't even bring himself to take it out of the bag that it was purchased in. The conversation ends with Nolan saying,
"Who am I?"
I think the healthier question is, who do you want to be?
When I figure it out, I'll let you know.
Immediately after putting his divorce forms away in the bank, a group of bank robbers walk in and start bossing around Stacy. One of them pushes her head to the ground, and Nolan immediately jumps up to try and protect her. He's immediately held at gunpoint and screamed to get down unless he wants to die. Nolan crouches back down and notices that Stacy is near an emergency panic button that's located under a desk. He distracts the robber once again, which gives Stacy enough time to press the button. Nolan continued to distract the robber and used the opportunity to vent about his life. He's never really felt like he's lived his life, and more that life just sorta happened to him. The bank robbery he's currently involved in is the most exciting thing that has happened to John in years, and he's never pushed himself to be anything in life. The bank robber pistol whips Nolan and threatens to kill him if he gets up again. Shocker, John stood right back up and kept talking to the robber. It's obvious now that John is trying his best to distract the robbers while waiting for the police to arrive. Nolan asked the robber if this is how the robber wanted his life to turn out. The robber pointed the gun at Nolan's head, and at the last second, the police showed up and shot the robber in the back. This is where you can see Nolan's true strength, which is in negotiation and conversations. This robbery itself made Nolan realize it's time to change. This is the first time we see the Rookie title card, alongside the theme song Kings and Queens by Chen. It's also the only time that the theme song continued to play past the title card. It showed John first arriving at the LAPD Mid-Wilshire department after his encounter with the bank robbers pulled him towards police work. The story of John Nolan is actually based on a real story, where William Norcross, a real officer in the LAPD, had a sudden career change at the ripe age of 44. Not only that, but he was also an executive producer in the pilot episode to make sure that the story was shaped correctly. Then, the two new officers that accompany Nolan were revealed. It started with Lucy Chen, played by Melissa O'Neill, pushing her broken car down across the street. Someone flashed their gun at Lucy, trying to steal her car, and...
Officer Chen, reporting for duty.
This is not only Lucy Chen's first arrest, but also the only arrest in the show to happen before an officer's first shift. Amazing start. It then cuts to the other rookie, Jackson West, played by Titus Mackin Jr. in the locker room. One of the training officers, Tim Bradford, played by Eric Winter, comes over to Jackson to antagonize him. Shortly before realizing that Jackson is the son of the Internal Affairs Commander, Tim immediately walks away right after. While Nolan was walking to the locker room, he met with Angela Lopez, played by Alyssa Diaz, and Talia Bishop, played by Afton Williamson. The two officers end up pranking John by telling him that all rookies must introduce themselves to the captain. Nolan went to Captain Zoe Anderson, played by Mercedes Mason, to formally introduce himself. She immediately picked up on Nolan being punked and started to talk about his former employment. While this wasn't made official until later in the season, Anderson actually picked John herself, as she saw his life experience to be an important asset to the department. She had immediate doubts though, as while she was looking through his information, Nolan made a joke and said he's something of a pioneer. Nolan managed to bounce back and redeem himself, but that was pretty close. Nolan arrives to the roll call room, where the watch commander is there to pair the rookies. Wade Gray, played by Richard T. Jones, paired Lucy Chen, the hotshot, with Tim Bradford. Jackson West, record breaker, was paired with Angela Lopez, and John Nolan, the 40-year-old rookie, was paired with Talia Bishop. The 40-year-old rookie joke was a homage to the Steve Carell movie The 40-Year-Old Virgin. However, it is just a joke, as Nolan is actually older, joining the LAPD at 45 years old. Gray also made a joke about Nolan being born before disco died, which is a callback to when disco slowly was phased out of radio stations back in 1979. After the roll call was dismissed, Gray immediately called over Nolan to talk to him. He told Nolan that he didn't like him, but it wasn't anything personal. It's more that Gray saw him as a walking midlife crisis, worried that if Nolan managed to succeed, he could be a proper role model for middle-aged losers also going through a midlife crisis. However, if this was a real interaction that happened between Watch Commander and Rookie, the Watch Commander would have received immediate reprimand. Nolan made his way back to his training officer, where she asked what Gray wanted from him. Nolan tried to lie, saying that he wished him luck, but Talia immediately saw through the lie. The next scene was a collection of each training officer explaining how their shop works, showing every single protocol that the police have to follow before going onto the streets. The scene was completely accurate to actual police protocol that the LAPD follows, even including calling the police vehicle a shop. It also shows that each training officer has different ways of teaching their boots, as Tim was forcing Lucy to take notes while examining their shop. Let's talk about Nolan's first ever arrival onto a scene, which is at a house with previous domestic abuse calls in the past. Nolan knocks on the door, where he is greeted by a tall man wearing a trash bag under his shirt. Nolan was first intimidated, but picked up on the trash bag under his shirt. Real LAPD officers are trained to pick up on subtle things that a person does, like movement, breathing, etc. So Nolan picking up on the trash bag was a way that Nolan could slowly release tension and chat with the person. He asked that the man was trying to make weight for a wrestling match, as wearing a sweatsuit can help you lose weight just a bit faster. He offered to give some wrestling advice, but wanted to talk to him outside to keep the wrestling talk away from his girlfriend. Bishop talked to the girl, where the girl says that she likes to push the guy's buttons, and that he isn't an abusive type. Nolan then talked to the guy, where he said that he was never aggressive towards her, and that she has a crazy temper. Nolan and Bishop walk away from the scene, and Bishop tells Nolan that they'll most likely be back later. Meanwhile, Lopez and Jackson received a call about a burglary and arrived on scene, where a lady answers the door and tells them that there's no burglary happening. At the same time, some glass shattered in the background, where a lady was trying to escape from the house and ended up falling off the roof. A couple minutes later, they took both the girl at the front door and the window lady into custody, as they found out that they broke into someone's house just to have sex in it. Alright then. Lopez said it was a shame that they could only charge for a misdemeanor trespass, while Jackson brings up charging them as a burglary for taking a shower in their house. This interaction reveals that Jackson is a bit stuck up when it comes to the law by following it almost exactly by the textbook. Their conversation didn't last long though. Remember the two suspects whose fetish it was to break into places and have sex? Yeah, the shop is now on that list. Let's move on to Tim and Lucy, who aren't immediately responding to a phone call. They're patrolling a neighborhood street when Tim decides to pull one of his famous Tim tests. He slams on the brake, pretending to be hit, asking Lucy what street they're currently located on so she can call for help. Lucy wasn't paying enough attention and had no clue where they were located, so Tim forced her to walk on the side of the street until she found out where she was. While walking, someone behind them honked at Tim, as he was going a brilliant 3 miles per hour while talking to Lucy on the street. Tim immediately pulled them over, but the driver didn't speak any English. Tim ordered Lucy to tell them that,
"Tell him that it's immigrants like them that make Americans like you look bad."
Obviously, Lucy did not do that, as it was blatant racism on Tim's part. After they let the driver go, Tim pulled Lucy aside, turned off her body cam, and revealed that he did speak Spanish and it was a test. First off, real officers should not be turning off others' body cams, period. But let's say that didn't matter at all. Tim didn't turn off his body cam during this interaction. So what was the point of him turning off Lucy's? We actually don't know if the racism part was supposed to be part of Tim's character or not. What he said was 100% racist, but the filming of the pilot episode happened 6 months before the full continuation of the rest of the season. Normally, showrunners like to exaggerate their characters in pilots of the show before fully deciding their character arcs, which is what could have happened with Tim here. We can now go back to Nolan, as he arrives on scene to a man smashing in someone's windshield. screaming about how the unicorn is laughing at him. Nolan tries to de-escalate the situation, but the man sees the unicorn in Nolan and tries to make a run for it. Luckily, the man was detained and arrested, but not by Nolan, as he had got stuck in a chain fence while trying to make his own shortcut. This, once again, shows the mistakes that new training officers in the LAPD can make, and I am glad that they showed that nobody is perfect, even in television. Anyways, while they were trying to get the suspect into custody, he kept screaming about Lucas and how he can't find him. Lucas, of course, being his kid that he left locked in his car. Tim and Lucy take the person back to the station while Nolan and Bishop start looking for the vehicle. They found a matching description of the vehicle, but it was a dead end. Nolan was looking lost until he spotted a group of unicorn balloons located next to a vehicle that matched the description. He booked it over there and found the kid locked inside the car. In this scene, you can see that Nolan is in complete fight or flight mode, constantly trying to open a car door that is clearly locked. Then he tried using his baton stick to shatter the driver's side window instead of using his window puncher. Thankfully, Bishop showed up and got the car unlocked, and the kid ended up being okay. But once again, this is another instance of Nolan not knowing the ins and outs of police work and showing that there could be improvements made to his police work. Moving on, it's the crew's lunchtime. They're all sat at a table eating lunch when Bishop gets radioed into the same domestic abuse call as the situation had escalated. The reason why Bishop and Nolan were radioed in specifically was due to their previous stop at the location earlier that day. They were able to talk to both people at the scene and slowly understand them as a person. Nolan and Bishop rush to the scene where they hear screaming and glass breaking. Bishop kicks down the door to find the girl on top of the wrestling man. It seemed like the guy may be abusing the girl, but the girl was actively stabbing the guy in the neck as he was trying to get her off of him. They got the girl knocked down and in handcuffs. But it was too late for the wrestling man. He was stabbed several times, and it was too late. Nolan tried to stabilize the bleeding, even breaking protocol by not putting on gloves beforehand, but again, it was too late. He had already passed. This was Nolan's first day on the job, and his first death on the job. Quite scary. Now, I know this death is sad and all, but I'm required to point out that since this was a life or death situation, Nolan not putting on gloves before trying to stabilize the victim did not break any procedures, as it could fall under exigent circumstances. So thankfully, Nolan did the best that he could. This was Nolan's final call of the night, and later was at a bar with Lucy and Jackson. Nolan explained how it felt like to feel someone die in his arms, and they tried their best to help comfort Nolan. Lucy and Jackson went on stage and started doing karaoke, and this slowly shows the audience that not only are the rookies all close together, but they also use their traumatic experiences to bond with one another. While Nolan was sitting by himself, one of the bartenders slipped him a napkin with her phone number on it. It then cuts to Nolan's backyard covered in clothing, making it seem like he just slept with the bartender from the night before. But of course, it was Lucy. I'm sure the audience is going to love this one. However, Nolan and Lucy have to hide their relationship from the rest of the LAPD to avoid either getting fired or being branded. But when it comes to the normal LAPD, it's not nearly as important as the show made it seem. As long as the officers disclose their relationship to the department, there shouldn't be any hiccups. The next day, Gray gave everyone a bolo for a criminal named Lance Selby, who had violated his parole. Gray promised that whoever was able to find and arrest Lance first would get Super Bowl Sunday off. Great trade, right? Sadly, a watch commander can't promise any sort of time off for finding a suspect, even if they're dangerous or not. Nolan decided to dig into Lance Selby and found that he had a common associate named Darius Nugent. They stopped at Darius's gym, where he said that he hadn't seen Lance since he ran away. While Darius was talking, Nolan used his construction intuition to find Darius's hidden stash, which was a disguised circuit breaker. He opened it up and Darius immediately got to talking. Now on to Lucy and Tim. Tim found a fitting punishment for Lucy after the traffic stop yesterday and took her to a local drug dealer that Tim knew. Lucy tried to search the man, but he fought back. She took down the drug dealer and was going to put him in the shop when a lady came out of a convenience store asking to let the dealer go. Tim turns around and notices that the girl was his ex-wife and ex-cop, Isabel. Lucy took care of the dealer while Tim started to talk to Isabel. She had gone radio silent, started doing drugs, and ignored every phone call from Tim. He tells her that he just wants to help, and she immediately asks for all of Tim's cash. Tim caves and pulls out his wallet to hand her cash, where she snatches it and runs away. Tim sits in the shop near the verge of tears. This scene is perfect. It shows that Tim is not always a hard ass and truly has feelings like everyone else. It helps Lucy realize that Tim does have a softer side, and Tim isn't as bad of a person as he comes off to be. Sadly though, this doesn't help when it comes to his job. If the department ever found out about Isabel, he would immediately be terminated, and even past his job, that would most likely have him end up in prison. Tim is doing his best to help Isabel, but he never reported any of her issues with internal affairs, and even gave her money, which could be considered funding to her addictions. He would have been put on admin leave while a full investigation happens, fired, then most likely arrested. Thankfully, right after the meetup with Isabel, Bishop and Nolan radioed in additional units for a possible location where Lance Selby could be located. Tim and Lucy immediately respond. They manage to arrive on scene before Bishop and Nolan could, and immediately identify one of the persons as Lance Selby. Tim tries to have them raise their hands, but they start firing back and end up shooting Tim in the side. Quick note, if you look very closely, you can already see blood on the side of the car door. Tim did just get shot, but that is way too much blood for a gunshot that happened a quarter of a second ago. Lucy immediately calls in Tim's injury and requests even more units to their location. She puts her life in danger trying to move Tim away from active fire, but Tim orders her to focus on the gunfight instead of him. This was actually the correct way to do this, as his wound wouldn't put him in immediate danger, and treating his wounds would give Lance a chance to escape. Finally, Nolan and Bishop arrive on scene, and one of Lance's crewmates notices this but ended up crashing into a parked vehicle. Bishop went to check on his suspect's injuries, while Nolan ran off to focus on Lance. Surprisingly, he wasn't knocked out and ended up attacking Bishop. Thankfully, she was able to overpower the suspect and knock him out, but it did momentarily take her out of the fight. Nolan tried to make a flank on Lance, but Lance hurt him and forced Nolan to go behind cover. Lance took the chance to run away from the police, while Nolan decided to check on Tim instead. Why? Once again, it was most likely a fight or flight response, and he'd rather check on his fellow officer instead of rushing headfirst into danger. But under Tim's command, Nolan and Lucy go back and start chasing after Selby. Lopez and Jackson finally arrive on scene, where they find Lance trying to flee for cover. This was Jackson's first proper gunfight, and he froze up when the bullets started flying, which gave Lance another chance to flee. Thankfully, Nolan caught up with Lance, who ended up holding a girl as hostage. Nolan managed to talk Lance down and have him slowly lower his weapon, which gave Nolan a chance to neutralize him by shooting him in the leg. Surprisingly, it does not break any federal laws, as it was a justifiable act to protect another human's life. Selby was put in handcuffs, and Lucy ran to Nolan to check on him. All of this happened right in front of Bishop's eyes, which immediately made her put the two pieces together. Later at the station, Gray pulled aside Nolan and yelled at him for leaving Bishop behind while she was actively fighting a suspect. He told Nolan that he knew that his midlife crisis would put his officers into danger, and he was fired. The sad thing is, Gray is kind of bright. Having someone like Nolan, whose life experience would be fantastic for the job, clearly showing signs of a midlife crisis and having their training officer be in danger on their second day of the job, yeah, I would probably fire them too. Later, Gray was called into Anderson's office and told him that Nolan deserved a chance in this department. Him making one mistake doesn't mark him down as a liability, and he was later reinstated with the department. This shows Anderson as someone who has true hope in Nolan and his experiences, while showing Gray as someone who is just being realistic, which I believe is a beautiful dynamic. There are only a few scenes left in this episode, with the first one being between Lucy and Bishop. Talia warned Lucy about relationships in the department. Bishop understands the reason why they kept their relationship secret, but warns her that if the relationship continues, then it'll be the only thing she's known for in the department. Then a short scene between Lopez and Jackson happened, where Lopez screamed at him, saying that if he freezes up again, she'll go to his father herself and get him fired. Holy. And the final scene was Nolan showing back up at the department and having a quick chat with Officer Bishop. He promised her to not leave her again, and everything was good between the two. And that is where the episode ends. Thank you all for watching, and make sure to hype up this video if you're on mobile to show me some love, and subscribe to see more videos like this one. Thanks for watching.